You have 847 friends on social media. You talk to maybe 12 of them. And somewhere, buried in your brain, a very old alarm is quietly going off. Because it was never built to track 847 people, it was built to track about 150. The real answer to why your online life feels so hollow isn't about the apps. It's about an ancient number you've been carrying inside your skull the entire time, and you never noticed. Your brain is not a modern machine. It is an ancient one wearing modern clothes. It was shaped over millions of years inside small bands of hunter-gatherers, and it still runs on rules written for that world. Here's the strange part. Those rules are still running right now, in your pocket every time you open an app. In the 1990s, a British anthropologist named Robin Dunbar started asking a strange question. He wasn't looking at humans first. He was looking at monkeys. Dunbar noticed that among primates, the size of a species' social group tracked closely with the size of its neocortex, the wrinkled outer layer of the brain responsible for complex thought. Bigger brain region, bigger social circle. It made sense. Tracking relationships is expensive. You have to remember who owes who a favor, who fought with who last week, who's trustworthy and who isn't. That's a lot of mental bookkeeping. So Dunbar did the math for humans. He plugged our neocortex size into the same formula. The number that came out was about 1 in 50. Not a rough guess, a hard cognitive ceiling. This became known as Dunbar's number. And it wasn't just theoretical. It kept showing up everywhere Dunbar looked. Traditional hunter-gatherer clans? Around 150 people. Neolithic farming villages, reconstructed from archaeological records? Around 150. Historical English villages listed in the Domesday Book of 1086? Clustered right around 150. Even military companies, the basic fighting unit in armies from ancient Rome to the modern era, tend to sit near 150 soldiers. That's not a coincidence, that's a ceiling built into human cognition itself. Why 150 though? What actually happens at that number? Below 150, something remarkable is possible. You can hold what anthropologists call a coherent social map. You know not just who each person is, but how they relate to everyone else. You know that your cousin doesn't get along with the blacksmith. You know the healer owes the hunter a debt. Trust, obligation, gossip, reputation, all of it stays trackable. Above 150, that map starts to break down. You still recognize faces. You still know names. But the web of relationships between those people becomes too tangled to hold. Strangers start needing rules instead of relationships, written laws instead of shared memory, hierarchies instead of trust. This is where it gets uncomfortable, because look at your own life for a second. You didn't choose 150 as a number. You never sat down and decided on a limit. But test it. How many people would you invite to your wedding if money and space were no object? Study after study, when researchers ask that question, the answer clusters around 120 to 150. Dunbar himself ran a study on this using an unexpectedly ordinary piece of evidence: Christmas card lists. He asked British households how many people they sent holiday cards to, and how many people those cards actually reached once you counted spouses and kids. The average number of people meaningfully included came out to about 153. Nobody was consciously aiming for that number. It just happened, because that's where the ceiling sits. Here's the twist that should genuinely unsettle you. Social media promised to break this ceiling. More friends, more connections, no limits, and numerically, it did break it. You can follow thousands of people. But a study led by researcher Bruno Gonalves, analyzing millions of Twitter accounts, found something telling. Even users who followed thousands of accounts only sustained real, reciprocal, ongoing conversation with a small, stable core. One that mapped almost exactly onto Dunbar's original layers. The technology expanded. The brain didn't. That's the part worth sitting with. Adding 800 followers doesn't give you 800 relationships. It gives you 150 relationships Buried under 650 acquaintances your brain quietly stops investing in. You feel this, even if you've never had the language for it. That vague sense of being surrounded by people yet strangely alone? That's not a personal failure. That's a hard architectural limit meeting an environment it was never designed for. Dunbar didn't just find one number. He found layers like rings inside a tree. At the very center sit your closest people, usually about 5, the ones you'd call at 3 a.m., without hesitating. Next ring out, about 15. People you'd trust with real problems. Next, about 50. People you'd invite to a big gathering and actually want there. Then the outer ring, the full 150. People whose personal life you could still meaningfully track. Past that, the numbers balloon fast. 500 acquaintances. 1,100 faces you could recognize but barely place. The rings aren't arbitrary either. They roughly triple at each step outward. And that pattern shows up in phone call records, in social media interaction data, in physical village structures going back thousands of years. Different tools, same architecture, over and over. So why does this matter for you? Scrolling through a feed built by people who have never heard of Robin Dunbar. Because every platform you use is fighting your own cognitive limits and calling it engagement. It's optimized to make you feel connected to hundreds, while your brain is only capable of truly holding on to a fraction of that. The gap between those two numbers isn't a flaw in you. It's the entire business model. There's a second layer to this that's even stranger. Your ancestors didn't just live inside a group of 150. They needed that group to survive. In small hunter-gatherer bands, isolation wasn't uncomfortable. It was lethal. A person cut off from the group lost access to food sharing, protection, and childcare support that no individual could manage alone. Anthropologist Sarah Blaffer-Hrdy, who spent decades studying the evolution of human cooperation, has argued that humans became the species we are precisely because child-rearing required more help than any one parent or even one couple could provide. Raising a human child successfully required what she calls alloparenting, a whole network of aunts, cousins, friends, and elders sharing the load. That network had a natural size. Roughly 150. This is why loneliness doesn't feel like a mild inconvenience to your nervous system. It feels like danger. Because for nearly all of human history, it was danger. Your body still reacts to social isolation the way it reacts to a physical threat, releasing stress hormones, disrupting sleep, weakening the immune system. Researchers studying loneliness, including work associated with psychologist John Cacioppo, have found that chronic isolation carries health risks comparable to smoking or obesity. That's not poetic language. That's a body responding to a modern condition with a Stone Age alarm system. Because as far as your biology is concerned, being alone still might mean not surviving the winter. Think about what that means for how you actually live now. You might work with 300 coworkers, live in a city of 2 million, follow thousands of accounts online. But your actual functioning tribe, the people who would show up if your life fell apart, is still hovering somewhere near 150, and probably closer to the tighter rings inside it. You're not broken for feeling like you can't keep up with everyone. You were never built to. Some researchers push back on the exact number. Sample sizes in the original neocortex studies were small, and cognitive capacity clearly varies by individual and even by culture. But even Dunbar's critics tend to agree on the underlying shape of the finding. There is a real ceiling. It clusters somewhere in that general range, and it does not move much no matter how many digital tools try to stretch it. The debate is about the exact edges. Nobody seriously argues the ceiling doesn't exist. So the next time you feel that low hum of guilt for not replying to every message, not keeping up with every acquaintance, not maintaining every connection your phone insists you should have, remember what's actually happening. You're not failing at friendship. You're a Pleistocene brain trying to run a piece of software built for a species with no cognitive limit at all. The mismatch isn't your fault. It's just old hardware meeting new demands it was never designed to handle. You still live in a tribe of 150. You always will. The only thing that's changed is how many strangers you now mistake for members of it.